In 1945, the world was bleeding. 6 years of terrible fighting destroyed entire cities across Europe and Asia. Millions of soldiers and ordinary families were dead. The survivors stood in the ashes of their homes. They looked at the sky and asked a difficult question. How do we stop this from ever happening again? If humanity fought another global war, there might be no humans left. The world needed a new plan. It needed a way for countries to talk instead of shoot. From this dark and tragic ash, a beautiful idea was born: a global family. Hi, and welcome to Daily English Origins. Are you learning English? Great! Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started. To understand the United Nations, we must travel back to 1914. This was the start of World War I. At the time, people called it the Great War. No one had ever seen such violence before. Countries fought with new, deadly machines. Millions died. When the war finally ended in 1918, the leaders of the world were shocked. They promised to never fight a war like that again. They wanted to create a place where nations could talk. In 1920, countries created the League of Nations. A league is a group of people or countries that work together for a common goal. The League of Nations was a good idea, but it was very weak. The United States did not join it. The League had no real power to stop countries from being aggressive. When some countries started to break the rules and invade their neighbors, the League of Nations did nothing. It failed to keep the peace. Because the League failed, a new darkness spread. In the 1930s, angry dictators took control of countries like Germany and Italy. A dictator is a ruler who has total power and uses fear to control the people. These dictators wanted more land. In 1939, they attacked their neighbors. This started World War II. It was a disaster. The mistakes of the past were happening all over again. But this time, the weapons were even more terrible. During World War II, the countries fighting against the dictators were called the Allies. An ally is a friend or partner who helps you in a fight. The main allies were the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. Their leaders knew they had to win the war, but they also needed a plan for the future. United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill met secretly. They wrote down their hopes for a free and peaceful world. In 1942, 26 countries signed a special paper. President Roosevelt called this group the United Nations. This was the very first time the name was used. These nations promised to fight together to stop the dictators. But they also promised something bigger. They promised to build a system of diplomacy. Diplomacy is the art of solving problems by talking and making deals instead of using violence. By early 1945, World War II was almost over. The Allies were winning. It was finally time to build the new global organization. In April 1945, delegates from 50 different countries traveled to San Francisco, California. A delegate is a person chosen to represent their country and vote for them. These delegates represented 80% of the world's population. They came from big countries and small countries. They spoke different languages, but they all wanted peace. For 2 months, the 50 nations argued, talked, and compromised. To compromise means to give up some things you want so that everyone can agree. It was not easy. The big countries wanted a lot of power, and the small countries wanted to be protected. Finally, they agreed on a document called the UN Charter. A charter is an official rule book that explains how an organization will work. On June 26, 1945, the 50 nations signed the UN Charter. A new era of human history was about to begin. The UN Charter created different groups inside the organization. The most powerful group is the Security Council. Their job is to keep world peace. 5 countries were given special power: the United States, Great Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and China. They are called the Permanent Five. They were given the power to veto. A veto is a special vote that stops an action. If just one of these 5 countries says no to a plan, the whole plan fails. This rule was made to keep the biggest countries from fighting each other, but it would cause many problems later. Almost immediately, the new United Nations faced a huge problem. The world divided into 2 angry sides. On one side was the United States. On the other side was the Soviet Union. This conflict was called the Cold War. A Cold War is a war with no direct fighting between the main countries. But they use spies, angry words, and smaller countries to fight for them. Because both the U.S. and the Soviet Union had the veto power, they often blocked each other. The UN Security Council was stuck. The dream of peace was freezing. Even though the big countries were arguing, the UN did something beautiful in 1948. A woman named Eleanor Roosevelt led a group to write the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Human rights are the basic freedoms that belong to every person in the world simply because they are human. This document said that all people are born free and equal. It said no one should be a slave, and everyone has a right to an education. It was a global promise to the ordinary people of the world. How do you stop a fight if you do not have your own army? The UN had to find a way. In 1956, during a dangerous conflict in Egypt, the UN tried a new idea. They sent soldiers, but not to fight. They sent soldiers to stand between the 2 angry armies. These soldiers wore bright blue helmets. They became known as peacekeepers. A peacekeeper is a soldier whose job is to protect civilians and help 2 sides talk instead of shoot. Today, thousands of brave UN peacekeepers work in dangerous places around the world. Are you enjoying this story? If you are, Please take one quick second to like this video and subscribe to Daily English Origins. Your support helps us make more stories just for you. Now, let's get back to the United Nations. The UN realized that bombs and guns were not the only things killing people. Sickness was also a terrible enemy. The UN created the World Health Organization, or WHO. Their mission was to fight disease across the globe. One of their biggest victories was against a terrible sickness called smallpox. Smallpox killed millions of people for thousands of years. The WHO doctors traveled everywhere to give vaccines. A vaccine is a medicine that teaches the body how to fight a virus. By 1980, the WHO helped to completely eradicate smallpox. To eradicate means to destroy something completely so it never comes back. After World War II, many children had no homes, no food, and no parents. The UN created a special group to help them. This group is called UNICEF. At first, UNICEF gave milk and blankets to hungry children in Europe. But soon, they realized that children all over the world needed help. Today, UNICEF builds schools, provides clean water, and gives emergency food to children in poor or dangerous areas. They show the world that every child's life is valuable, no matter where they are born. The United Nations grew very fast. In the 1960s and 1970s, many countries in Africa and Asia gained their independence. They joined the UN as free nations. The UN grew from 50 countries to over 150. But growth brought more arguments. Often the UN could not stop terrible wars in places like Vietnam, Rwanda, and the Middle East. People began to criticize the UN. To criticize means to point out the faults or mistakes of someone or something. People asked, is the UN too weak? Are the big countries too selfish? The dream of perfect global peace was very hard to achieve in a divided world. In the year 2000, the UN made a new promise. They wanted to fight a different kind of enemy. They wanted to end extreme poverty. Poverty is a situation where people are very poor and do not have enough money for food, water, or shelter. The UN created a list of global goals. They worked with wealthy countries to help poor countries build hospitals, farms, and clean water systems. The goal was to give every human a chance to live a healthy life. Today, the UN fights a new danger. This enemy is not an angry dictator or a virus. It is climate change. Climate change is the dangerous warming of the earth because of human pollution. If the earth gets too hot, oceans will rise and storms will destroy cities. No single country can stop this alone. The UN brings the leaders of the world together. They sit in big rooms and try to write agreements to protect our shared planet. In our modern world, millions of people must run away from their homes because of war, violence, or terrible storms. These people are called refugees. A refugee is a person who is forced to leave their country to escape danger. The UN has a special agency just for them. They build giant camps in safe areas. They provide tents, food, and medicine to families who have lost everything. They give hope to people in their darkest hours. The UN is not perfect. Today it has 193 member countries. Because it is so big, it struggles with bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a complicated system of rules and paperwork that makes action very slow. When a sudden war starts, the UN often argues for too long before helping. The big countries in the Security Council still use their veto power to block each other. Many people feel frustrated when the UN is too slow to stop human suffering. When people think of the United Nations, they usually imagine politicians in expensive suits in New York City. But the real UN is very different. The real UN is made of brave aid workers. An aid worker is a person who travels to dangerous or poor places to help others. They drive trucks full of food through war zones. They teach children in refugee camps. They are the true heroes of this global organization. The United Nations was born from the ashes of a terrible global war. Over the last 80 years, it has failed many times, but it has also saved millions of lives. The UN provides a very important table. Even when countries hate each other, they can sit at this table. They can talk, argue, and look into each other's eyes. The story of the United Nations is the story of humanity. We are a large, complicated, and divided global family. We often argue, and sadly, we sometimes fight. But the existence of the UN reminds us of our best hope. It shows us that diplomacy is always better than destruction. It teaches us that resilience, empathy, and cooperation can build a better world out of tragedy. As long as we keep talking to each other, there is always hope for peace. Hey there, just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like. Write your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.